Hello, welcome to Supply Chain India episode 9. Logistics and the army are synonymous. No logistics, no army. It is that close. Peacetime or war situation, they have to move men and material to feed the forces on duty at regular intervals because the conflict has no set time and men cannot fight on empty stomach. Without ammunition, no fight possible. Therefore, the supply lane has to be robust. In this episode, we caught hold of Lieutenant General Balbir Singh Sandhu, Director General of Transportation and Logistics of the Indian Army, to understand the importance of connectivity. He retired in 2017 after 37 long years. Without roads, troop movement is affected. As far as India is concerned, the northeast bordering China is a constant worry. Connectivity is a challenge. 12 years he served in the Northeast and knows the region like the back of his palm. Post retirement, he had done his doctorate with peace, connectivity, and security as the core theme for the thesis. Here we go straight to him.
I served there in 1979.
Okay.
I was a young officer. I had just joined as a commissioned officer in December 78. In April 79, I was posted to Arunachal Pradesh, right?
Oh.
And in Arunachal, as a young officer, I used to volunteer to go for patrolling. Patrolling is like trekking. You are supposed to carry 20 men with you and familiarize yourself with the operational area. So that was my first exposure. When I went on one day, you are walking from 14,000 feet down to 3,000 feet, then again come up. So I did a lot of patrolling there. So I know that area backwards. And the next time I went there was when I was the Director General of Supplies and Transport. But that time I went in a vehicle. In our time, I used to do a lot of walking and trekking there.
Which year was it when you went as a Director General of Supply?
2017 or 16.
Almost towards the retirement, just before retiring, you revisited Arunachal Pradesh.
I revisited Arunachal Pradesh. This time I was on a vehicle from Guwahati. I went all over right up to Bumla, where that post with the Chinese is. And that time we used to walk up to Bumla. Now it's a tourist spot.
I spent almost, more than 2 months in Arunachal Pradesh in 2012. Traveling all the way from Tezu to Tejpur. And of course, then I came down to Guwahati and blew out. I was basically doing a survey of all the coal supply chain, because it's a very rich, organic, state in terms of vegetable fruits. But due to lack of, roads, infrastructure, they were unable to, really move the produce to mainland. Okay, that's where I spent.
Either you ask the question, if there is one word by which you want to solve maximum problems of Northeast, it is connectivity.
Yeah.
Connectivity, or the lack of it today and how much you need it. It can solve most of the problems of Northeast.
So, when you visited in 2017, okay, what was the kind of changes you noticed in terms of connectivity? Because I also spent a lot of time in Northeast. Excepting Mizoram, I have traveled in almost all other states of Northeast. Okay, in fact, I also traveled via Moreh into Burma for a couple of hours, taking the permission, a few hour permission. Okay, the Assam Rifles was manning that post. Okay, so I remember that. What kind of changes you noticed? And again, 2012, when I traveled in Arunachal Pradesh, I mean, it was mostly on road, absolutely kacha roads, sumos. Okay, 10 people, 15 people, seated in a, very crowded kind of a stuff. Okay, all bad roads. But I traveled with the entire distance by that kind of a road only. So in 2017, when that time they were talking about Arunachal, like a trunk road or national highway, something Arunachal Grand Trunk or something it was talked about. Okay, when you visited in 2017, you said you traveled in a vehicle. What was the infrastructure, road conditions like?
If you permit, I'll cover the entire Northeast because I went to Northeast the first time in 79. Second time I went in uh, 90,
Okay.
1990.
Okay.
Next time I went in 1998 to 2001. And the last time I went to Nagaland, and there was an entire area, I was there from 2005 to 2007. Right. So I tell you what happened and what did not happen. See, in Arunachal, when I went the first time, that road which goes from Tezpur up to Tenga Valley, and then from Tenga Valley right up to Tawang and then Bumla. Now, this main road, which goes from Tezpur to Tenga, certainly has been widened a bit, right? The main impact is beyond Tenga Valley. A number of roads which were not existing have come up. And my view is that I hope they concentrate on environment and make sure that the landslides don't affect them in times to come. After all, there has been deforestation due to while making the infrastructure. They must put in effort to again have environment come up so that the natural protection of the hillsides stays. Now, coming to the other areas, the main Guwahati Tinsukia highway has always been and generally is fairly well maintained, right? Now, what worries is the highways which go, say, from Kohima to Imphal, from Nagaland to Manipur. That's NH39, I think, is the number, which is the mainstay of maintaining connecting two state capitals to the railhead. Now, this is 225 kilometers distance. Ideally, by international standard, it shouldn't take you more than 2.5 to 3 hours if it is made an expressway or motorway. Unfortunately, it takes between 7 to 10 hours to travel this 225 kilometers. That means an average speed of 25-30 kilometers. And at times, it is like a cratered road. And of course, there is a inherent seismological disadvantage of this area being, mild hills which are all of sand and the landslides are plenty. Yet, I think with technology, you can make sure that this road does much better, right? Likewise, there is a road which connects Imphal to Aizawl. Aizawl is the capital of Mizoram, and Imphal is the capital of Manipur. Now, both these places are beautiful places for tourism. That road which is supposed to be connecting it as a national highway does not exist even as a rural road today. So
What could be the reason?
The reasons are many. What ails the Northeast is the terrible security situation because of insurgency, right? And because of that insurgency, the infrastructure cannot be developed. And because of lack of accountability on the part of administration, like the central government allots you 100 crores, you allocate it to be done on these projects. The officers cannot go and supervise those projects. The terrorist threatens the contractor to give him a very big, in fact, a lot of funds of the central government fund the militants at the trigger happy guys. They are the ones they put the gun to the head of these guys, contractors who have to do the work. So administration is not able to hold the contractor accountable, and militant is sucking that money out of the system, and that is what I would call it as make the connivance with narco terrorism. So narco and lack of accountability. So this certain area, the risk of the militant runs so much that even the state doesn't have the ability to execute projects. So it is the corruption.
So the state was basically funding the terrorists very, like a very by default or indirect method. not to its liking.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, due to lack of correct conducive environment for development, the development funds fall in the wrong hands. Right? There are extortions at gunpoint, and people, for their own safety and security, end up. The funds end up getting sucked out into the militant hands.
Tell me, I mean, I understand that you also, currently, recently have, done a PhD, a thesis, something on the connectivity in the Northeast or BIMSTEC. Can you throw a little more light on what the thesis was? How did this project come about?
During my service of about almost 37, 38 years, I spent more than 12 years in Northeast. Northeast is such a lovely, unique area of this country that most of us are extremely ignorant about. And I would not be wrong to say, sitting in Delhi, if you have a quiz for all the government officials to name the 8 northeastern states, 80% will fail, right? And if you ask them about the capital, 95% will fail of each of these states. So that's the kind of ignorance about the Northeast. Now, having spent all my field area posting journey in Northeast, like I told you, I was a second lieutenant there, and my last tenure there was as a brigadier. Even as a colonel, when I was commanding a battalion, it was spread in 5 states. And I used to cover a lot of distance by helicopter and a lot by road. So since you are spread out so much, all that I had to do was to prevent untoward incidents in my area. That itself was good. So I had a love for Northeast. I enjoyed being there, and you can't imagine how beautiful is the countryside, and you can't imagine how energetic are the people. By the way, majority of sports person in this country come from Manipur.
Oh,
Yeah. There's lady Nirmala Devi, that other boxer, naval chief petty officer, Toiba Singh, and they are all from Northeast. Even in your hockey team, you'll find 2, 3 boys from Manipur, and in the ladies hockey team similarly. So they are basically very energetic people. They love music. Countryside, like I'll tell you, most of these states are like hill stations. Shillong is a hill station. Aizawl is a hill station. Imphal is a beautiful valley, which is a plateau, and again the weather is fabulous. Kohima is a hill station, and there are a whole lot of them in Arunachal. I've never been to Itanagar, that I'm also at the foothills of near the thing. So there are potential for all this is so much, and like you spoke about organic. Potential for organic agriculture there is so much, and it's all virgin land. So I qualified to do this my PhD from Department of Strategic Studies in Punjabi University Patiala, which of course was of an entrance examination. Now I had to choose a subject. So I said, what better subject than Northeast? So I was given the thing, yeah, to do peace, security, and economic development of Northeast India with reference to BIMSTEC.
can you sum it up? What exactly was your thesis all about? I mean, in one sentence you told it, but I want you to slightly expand,
Okay.
particularly on the
No,
connectivity, economic development.
okay. So basically, if you are aware, Northeast India is connected to rest of India by only 23 kilometers. Siliguri corridor. If you see the map, I wish I could show you the map now.
Sir, I spent a lot of time in Siliguri. I
Yeah,
was there for a couple of days. I remember that area. Chicken Neck.
Siliguri corridor is the most strategic point for Northeast. It connects the Northeast India, and Northeast in part of India connects 5,600 kilometers periphery with the neighboring states, starting from Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar, then of course Tibet, Autonomous Region, and Bhutan, right? So if I look back as to how we did things, we should have concentrated on these neighbors right from the beginning after independence. We are lucky that Bangladesh, which was erstwhile East Pakistan, has got independence. And today we have much more friendlier relations with Bangladesh.
Hmm.
One thing that the partition of Bengal did to India was to cut off the connectivity between eastern India, that is Kolkata, and places like Agartala. If you travel from Kolkata to Agartala via Bangladesh, it is 500 and a few kilometers.
Yeah,
And if you come via Siliguri, it is about 1400 kilometers.
very roundabout.
Right. Now, understand the supply chain cost gets added. In the case of India, as it is one of the big impediment in our economic progresses, we have the highest cost of logistics and supply chain in India compared to all the Western and China and other countries.
Yeah.
Also, East India and Northeast was cut off. Northeast India's per capita income of Assam prior to independence was higher than the national average.
Good.
Today it is two-thirds, yes, two-thirds less than the national average. Why? Because there is no manufacturing there and the supply chain got cut. The waterways connection between East India and Northeast was fabulous prior to independence. If you see
Padma.
now,
Padma, no?
Padma in Ganges. So now the government of India and Bangladesh are trying to work out transit arrangements by which the goods move faster to northeast India from east India, and the connect with the Bay of Bengal of the northeast India is through Myanmar and Bangladesh, right? So there is no cheaper mode of transport than waterways. So if Northeast has to become relevant in BIMSTEC, that is with Myanmar and Thailand being the other part, and Bangladesh and Bhutan,
Yeah.
Northeast has to become a manufacturing hub by itself. And there's a lot of potential in that, in terms of educated manpower, in terms of natural resources, which are plenty. So, relevance of Northeast India in the BIMSTEC will come about only once we make manufacturing hub in the Northeast.
So what are the
And with
chances of
that,
that really emerging as a manufacturing hub? Because basically
yeah,
Northeast is a consumption center. I mean, what kind of no? I mean, how soon you reckon it will really become a manufacturing hub? Lot more factories will come up. Excepting I understand there are some cement factories, okay, or some processing, agri processing, pineapple processing plants. Like some Tripura. I remember. Okay, yeah, tell me.
I would say, see, if you see the recent study of IMF, it visualizes Bangladesh per capita income crossing India's by end of this year, financial year. Now, Bangladesh has concentrated a lot on human resource development and exports,
Hmm.
right? I would say, and I written an article earlier in the one of the strategic journals. India's look east policy. I said look closer east means look at Myanmar and Bangladesh. Why can't I set up a joint SEZ where Bangladesh and India's border and I export out of Chittagong port?
Hmm.
Likewise, with Manipur, with Myanmar, and export out of Sitwe port,
Hmm.
right? So, uh, what really, if you Europe and everywhere is, it has to be a win-win situation, right? When you partner people, you benefit them, you benefit yourself. So maybe places which are closer to the sea and which are farther away from Siliguri, maybe one way of doing business. You partner with them and let's have investment from India, partnering with them, use their port, and such arrangements and the natural resources which are available in the northeast, instead of moving towards Siliguri and mainland India, can move towards that side, and we earn money out of export. So manufacturing has to be incentivized. And like I said, peace, security, and economic development. You will agree with me that you can establish economic activity only when there is peace,
True.
only when there's a conducive environment for people to invest. So that's what I feel. So my main finding was that uh, peace, security, and economic development are related to each other.
Yeah.
You have to have peace and a secure environment for somebody to invest and do business, right? Once you create job, you do business, then there will be economic development. Once there is economic development, the youth doesn't want to go and pick up the gun to for a smaller cause.
We take a break. When we come back, we try to understand whether the rail will gobble up a huge chunk of finished vehicle movement from the road.
Are you part of the new fleet evolution? The transition is already underway. Fleets are using data to manage smarter, keeping drivers safe, streamlining operations, keeping customers satisfied. This requires agility and the right platform. Did you know that 94% of road accidents are caused by human error? What if your drivers had an active coach, keeping them engaged and safe and reducing their stress? And what about your managers? What if you could cut their administrative workload and help them gain visibility and control of the fleet? Green Road supports you with one unified platform. Our advanced active coaching gives drivers clear feedback to help them drive more safely and efficiently, and keeps them motivated via personalized information and friendly competition. In the office, online dashboards keep the right information at your fingertips, freeing you to focus on exceptions and pressing issues. Whether you require an app, an installed solution, or other sensors, all are integrated into a single platform that helps you manage diverse operations proactively across the world. The result? Safe drivers, reduced risk, protection for your brand, and savings for your business. The Green Road platform is quick and easy to deploy at scale, even for fleets with thousands of drivers and vehicles throughout the world. Green Road.
Welcome back. You are watching Supply Chain India, episode 9. 5 years ago, the Indian Railways carried around 5% of finished vehicle across India. Today, this has tripled, 15%. Does it mean the car carrier segment is losing out? Car Carrier Association of India founder president and chairman and managing director of Palya Trans Logistics, Vipul Nanda, poo-poos such fears. Road movement will continue to rule the roost, says Nanda.
First of all, train is here to stay. We have to first get this thing clear in our mind. Nowhere in the world, probably where the major markets are there for automobiles, train has always played an important role. In India, the percentage was low. Now it is round about the 12 to 15% mark.
You are talking about finished vehicle movement
Yes. So it was earlier at around 5%. Now it's gone up to probably, I think so, by the end of it should be around 15%. But of course, the 15% of the volume amounts to probably 25% or maybe 30% of the freight, because they take the long routes. So if you calculate in terms of freight, it turns out to be 50% for 30%. One thing I'd like to say that not many car carrier players. TCI was always into right from the beginning. It was into MNG and all those things for the railways. And I think so in the car carrier players only IVC has gone into railways. No other car carrier player has gone into railways. APL is a totally different story. And I don't think so apart from IVC there's any other car carrier company which has shifted to railways? I think probably in these last 4 5 months, the volume has been very good in railways, and the main reason is that the passenger trains are not working full. So the rail racks are doing a very good transit time and very good turnaround time. So even with the less number of racks, you are able to rotate it more. So that has probably led to this situation. I think so. The real capacity with the passenger train running in full capacity, I think it would be the real capacity to lift through NMGs and rail racks would be tested at that time. Apart from this, I think so. But of course, it is when dedicated freight corridor comes, it will again it will go down when the passenger trains start working, and then when the dedicated freight corridor comes up, it will again the levels will go up again. So I think it will be probably, I think so, we'll see 15% of the volumes going on train.
I mean, okay, but the volume is also increasing, isn't it? I mean, the number of
Yeah,
cars,
I think in the
the
last
size of the cake is enlarging.
in the last 3 months, you can very well say yes. It has been last 3 months of this year have been better than the last 3 months of the previous year.
Okay. Where do you see? I mean, this is going to sustain. You mentioned, before we started, you said the mood up to the road up to Diwali was excellent, and subsequently also it is more or less that the trend is continuing.
The trend is continuing. I really feel that, and I hope it continues. And but because November, December, there's a wedding season, so I think so. A lot of sales happen during this period, and in December, year-end discounts also lead to sales. In January, I think so. The once the vaccine is there, the sentiment should be normally better on its own.
Yeah.
Right now, people who want to move from public transport to their own transport, I think this thing has increased a lot. The real sale increase has come from this point. And it's not only that people who are taking these cars, they are taking not the real small cars, the SUVs, like, because the aspiration of the people have really gone up. And then now the real problem is not the real RTO problem, but state governments just chalaning the transporters for revenue purpose. So that has become a real headache, and there you can't even probably fight it out because the state governments very clearly says that we want it for revenue.
So all your efforts, like you have been fighting for it, like in Rajasthan for very long. Okay, so nothing seems to have really happened.
Nothing. But of course, things they start chalaning every vehicle, but when you protest, then they start chalaning only a few vehicles. But it's not the end of the story.
Okay, then how do you manage, like this kind of, I mean, is it get included into the casting, freight casting?
Probably, I think so. No OEM is paying for these challans. Right now, no OEM is paying for these challans. Only probably we are hoping that extra volumes will be able to take care of these challans, but at the end of the day, this is probably going from our pocket right now. It is difficult for us. We are of course very lucky that the business has started. There are some sectors which have not started. That's why we don't want to go into these protests and all those things, because at least the business is at least running. Because we don't want to stop it for the sake of all these challans and all this, just because we want to come back to that same level and same way of functioning, because otherwise if we stop it, then we are nowhere now, right? Because it took a while to start it again.
It's almost a year, November last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mercurio Polia moved out and it became a Polia Trans Logistics.
Yes, yes, yes.
So it's been almost, I hear you're celebrating.
Absolutely 1 year.
So what has been the transition like? Unfortunately, COVID came, but even otherwise, what is the transition like?
Yeah, I think so. We've tried to reduce cost in terms of of course, the specialized manpower and the top level management, which was put in by Jeffco and Grupo Mercurio, they are no more apart, and that's a very huge cost because now it is a family driven company, and so that very huge part of the cost, expensive professionals and the top management, that thing has gone away. We've shifted office into a much of course, much comfortable office and much much cheaper office, and I think we've reduced the cost a lot. We've taken the initiative to reduce the cost, and on its own, because of lack of traveling and all those things, the cost has reduced itself.
Huge savings, huh?
Yeah, so it has helped us, and of course the I think the top management which Jeffco put into the company did not probably. I might be wrong, or it's too easy to comment, but I think so. They did not have the same hands-on approach with the drivers and the lower staff. So I think so. We, knowing the trade for the last 30 years, it's always been a family-run business. So we know what the pain points are of the drivers and how to tackle those problems. And I think so. With that, the fleet has become more efficient also, and the same fleet is doing better kilometers and better mileage, and of course that converts into revenue. And when you do more revenue at the same level of fixed cost, the margins do get better. No, we are around about 100 cars out there. We already were present in Hyderabad and NCR. Now we've started very recently in Bangalore, and just after the COVID time, Shell, the energy joint, selected this company to be one of the shareholders in the company. Of course, with a very minor share, but I think so. It will help us to structure the company well, and we'll probably learn from their experience how to expand the company, and they'll probably also help us to get investors and the private equities and all the companies to help us to grow. It is a tough time for this business because it was mainly dependent on corporate manpower, transportation, and these were companies which really cared for sustainabilities, like the Googles, the E&Ys, and the Deloittes, and Tupperware, all these companies which really care for sustainability. So these companies, a lot of people have started working from home, and these offices are shut. We expect it to get better, and probably in January, February, March, once I think they reopen their offices. But still now we've started with as a partner to Uber. We've already started getting our revenues back on track. It's not at the same level of February which we left, but I think with time, I think so we should be back to normal within 3-4 months. This is more difficult than the car carrier business.
Oh, really?
Right. Right now it is more difficult because in car carriers you have the automobile sale to sustain it. So, but this thing, I think it will take time, but I think so it should be back. It is very futuristic because I think so. You see the atmosphere outside. I think this is, and I think so. We feel happy that we are at least doing something for the next generation.
Okay.
At least there's a social cause there.
Okay.
Wow.
that brings us to the end of Supply Chain India episode 9. Hope you enjoy this capsule. Share it, subscribe, give your feedback. We'll be back with another edition soon. Stay safe, stay healthy. Till then, goodbye.